We're here on Monday Night Raw, and Bobby Lashley was set up for a spear, taking down Cameron Grimes, and he would pick up the win tonight on Friday Night SmackDown. But as Lashley actually picked up the win, the lights will go out. And when they come back on, Cameron Grimes is getting dropped with a Sister Abigail by Uncle Howdy. And Uncle Howdy just now turns and looks at Lashley and just stands there motionless. But then, from behind Lashley, we see in the ring, it's Bray Wyatt. And then as Lashley turns around, the lights go out. There's no way. Is he actually back? Lashley is confused and kind of upset, really, as to what he just saw. But he just walks away. And it is indeed correct. Bray Wyatt is back as next Friday Night SmackDown. We're having a Firefly Funhouse episode where Bray Wyatt says, "Bobby Lashley, I'm back to take what I should have done. I'm here to destroy you, and he is always watching me as well. You will be set and put in your place soon." The next week on Friday Night SmackDown, the almighty Bobby Lashley's in the ring and he says, "Bray Wyatt, you want to play your little kitty games? Well, I'm not actually scared of you if you haven't noticed. I am the almighty Bobby Lashley, and I'm not afraid of anyone. So why don't you come out here and we settle this man to man?" But just then, the lights go out, and when they come back on, behind Lashley is the man, the guy. What is going to happen right now? What is Lashley thinking? And Lashley turns around and they're right into, oh my gosh, a spine buster that Uncle Howdy runs right into. And Lashley's now set up for the spear. But then the lights go out. Lashley, before he can hit it. And when the lights come back on, Lashley's once again confused. But he's not at all surprised, I guess you could say, or impressed. But just then, he just walks away. And then next week, on Friday Night SmackDown, it was set Bobby Lashley versus Karrion Kross in a one-on-one match. And at the beginning of the match, Lashley goes right after Kross and delivers a power bomb. Actually, he would deliver two back-to-back devastating power bombs that were definitely impactful on Karrion Kross. But later on, Karrion Kross would get in control on Lashley and start to take him out and punish him. It would target the leg of the almighty Bobby Lashley. And later on, these two were brawling all around the arena outside. Lashley would send Kross into the barricade, but then Lashley would try to show off against Kross. But then eventually Kross would come back, delivering a headbutt, which turned this match all the way around and allowed him to get in control. He would set Lashley onto the barricade and deliver a big boot, just like that, taking down the almighty. And eventually they would get back into the ring, which would allow Lashley to get in control and deliver that. But then the lights go off, and then when they come back on, once again, Lashley's looking around, but he doesn't see anything. And that distraction for a moment allows Kross to lock in the cross jacket on the almighty Bobby Lashley and punish him. And Lashley would fade away and give Kross the victory via the distraction from Bray Wyatt. Next week on the SmackDown, we're set for yet another Firefly Funhouse episode. And Bray Wyatt is talking about the darkness that's been inside of him. He says, "Lashley, my darkness cannot be controlled, but my darkness will be unleashed on you whenever the time comes." Nikki Cross dominating us Raw, taking out Natalya, and we'll get the victory on Raw. Same with Alexa Bliss, taking out Tamina, disposing her, and getting the victory. And this was enough for Lashley to talk to Adam Pearce in his office. You can see the intensity in Lashley's eyes. He says, "Pearce, I'm sick of Bray Wyatt and his mind games. I want to fight him one-on-one at Payback if you don't mind. Make it official." Pearce says, "I can absolutely do that, Bobby Lashley. I can make it official. One-on-one Bobby Lashley versus Bray Wyatt at Payback. It's set. The match is made. It's official." And Lashley's actually pretty happy about this. He says, "Thank you, Pierce. I appreciate you." And Lashley walks away, but that symbol does not lie in the air. In the next Firefly Funhouse episode, it's Lashley tearing apart the Funhouse. And he says, "Bray, I cannot wait for this Saturday. When I tear you apart at Payback, it will be over for you. You know where to run, nowhere for you to hide with your little mind games. I am a warrior, Bray, and you do not want to mess with me. This is what you get. This will be your debt for messing with the." But Lashley's interrupted by his sister Abigail from Uncle Howdy in the Funhouse. Uncle Howdy drops Lashley, but now it was finally time. One-on-one, Bobby Lashley set. He's ready to go, waiting for Bray Wyatt. The lights go out. What is Bray Wyatt waiting for? Until it's Uncle Howdy, and he just stands on the ramp motionless. The crowd are dead silent. They're so confused with what's going on. And Lashley is not pleased by this. As he's upset, he's pacing around the ring back and forth until the lights go out again. And when they come back on, Bray Wyatt is behind Lashley. Lashley can sense it. He can feel it. The negative energy of Wyatt. But in a quick glance, he turns around and right into a mandible claw that Bray Wyatt locks in on the almighty Bobby Lashley, and he's punishing him. Lashley's in pain, but Lashley can't fight it. He eventually fades, and this gets Bray Wyatt the win in a match that Lashley was not expecting. But now, what is going to be in store for Bray? The next week on SmackDown, Lashley arrives to the arena, but he's stopped in front in the parking lot by security. He says, "I'm sorry, guy, you can't be here, man. Adam Pearce's orders." Lashley says, "I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but please, I'm going to need you to step out of the way. I have business to attend to." And the security guy says, "No, I'm sorry, Lashley. You just can't be here. You have to leave. Be escorted arena. I'm sorry, not my orders. It's Pierce's orders." And Lashley doesn't like this. He's really upset. He's really angry. It looks like Lashley has something, but he turns around and spears the security. Lashley doesn't care. He charges into the backstage area. He's looking for Bray, but he can't find him. But eventually, Bray Wyatt will reveal himself on top of some large structure that Lashley sees him. But Lashley charges at him. He climbs up the ladder to try to get to the top to get his hands on Bray Wyatt. Lashley wants to sell this, but as soon as he gets up there, he's caught with a mandible claw from Bray Wyatt. And Lashley is gasping for air. He can't breathe. And Lashley looks at him and says, "This is your choice, Lashley. You're going to pay the price now." And oh my God, Lashley will get thrown off of the structure by Bray Wyatt into the light. And Bray Wyatt's just looking there menacingly. And now the next week on SmackDown, the Firefly Funhouse special episode features Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, who just said, "We're dominating Monday Night Raw," while the other Wyatt family members are dominating on SmackDown. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, we dropped them. Same with Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, the newcomers who think they can just take over. And we even destroyed Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green to become the new Women's World Tag Team Champions, just like that. And Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy, they're also doing their job on Friday Night SmackDown by taking out Butch and Ridge Holland of the Brawling Brutes and getting wins. But then they were interrupted with their celebration by a very familiar man. Bray Wyatt just looks at Uncle Howdy and says, "What are you doing? Why are you just standing there? Get after him now, Howdy. Take care of him." and Howdy obliges. He actually slides out and runs towards Lashley, but gets cut off with a spear by the almighty Bobby Lashley. Lashley's back for vengeance, and he will not rest until he gets it. He walks down to the ring. He meets Bray Wyatt at the ring. He climbs in. He climbs up on the apron. He climbs into the ring, and he's face to face now with his enemy, Bray Wyatt. You can see the tension in both men's eyes. Wyatt says, "Come on, give me everything you got, Lashley." And Lashley actually charges at him, but then the lights once again, and when they come back on, Lashley once again is alone in the ring, and nowhere for Wyatt inside, and nowhere Howdy inside. What is gonna happen? But Lashley doesn't care. He says, "Bray, I want you one more time, one more match. Me and you one-on-one, not just a normal match. I want a match inside Hell in a Cell. But I want the Fiend, not Bray Wyatt." And Lashley walks away with that in mind. And it was time. Hell in a Cell, Bobby Lashley versus the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, the demonic entity that Bray Wyatt keeps inside, the darkness. And Lashley will go right after the Fiend. This is what Lashley wanted. Exactly the version of Bray Wyatt Lashley wanted, the Fiend. But the Fiend would ultimately come back and take out the almighty Bobby Lashley. Early on in the match, the Fiend would torture Lashley on the outside and even end up busting through the wall of the Hell in a Cell early on in the match. And then the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, would punish Lashley on the outside of the ring, just tormenting him, slamming him all over the place. The Fiend would demolish Lashley onto the ramp a little bit, just to punish him, wear Lashley down a little bit, lift him up, and then plant him with a gut buster just like that. Then the Fiend, being sadistic as he is, climbs on top of the Hell in a Cell. He wants to end this for good. The Fiend wants Lashley to climb it. Lashley struggles, but he gets back to his feet. He manages. He climbs the cell after the Fiend. These two want to punish each other. They want to end this. And as Lashley's climbing, the Fiend is feeding off this energy and that Lashley brings. And these two will go at it to end this once and for all, punishing each other on top of the cell. These two were going at it brutally, throwing haymakers at each other. But the Fiend will get the upper hand. And then once he takes Lashley down, he starts circling him like he's hunting down his prey. He circles Lashley on the cell, but Lashley counters with a spear as he charges to the Fiend and takes him down. Lashley starts showboating, but his showboating gets interrupted by a very familiar man. It's Uncle Howdy with a spear who would take out Lashley, ultimately to help the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Howdy is fiending. He's feeding off this energy. He's waiting for Lashley to get up, tries to deliver Sister Abigail, but Lashley would counter. And Lashley was looking to end this. He wants to be done with this, with Bray Wyatt in a sadistic man as Uncle Howdy. He tosses Howdy off of the top of the cell. Lashley showboating. Lashley's taking care of Howdy, but just as from behind him, but Lashley caught it. He knew about the Fiend in his games. He locks in the hurt lock and slanging the Fiend around everywhere. He's punishing the Fiend. The Fiend actually starts to fade, I think. But then the lights go out. What is going on? And when they come back on, the sixth member of the Wyatt Six. Who is it? Oh my Lord. It's Malachi Black. Lashley doesn't have time to process this. He can't believe it as he runs into a black mass from Malachi Black. What is he doing here? Malachi has just dropped Lashley. He must be the sixth member of the Y6. But just then the Fiend gets up and plants Lashley through the top of the cell. He gets down. He lifts up Lashley. Sister Abigail position. And he finally puts the final nail in the coffin of Bobby Lashley. 1, 2, the Fiend has put down the Almighty. Thanks to the help of the sixth member of the Wyatt Six, Malachi Black. What is taking place? What business has the Wyatt Six have in store? But I guess we could say, welcome to the Wyatt Six.